He is the man,
Himself.
the man, the legend himself, Peter
The
Sage.
legend
How are you?
100-degree fever, would you believe?
100-degree fever.
104 yesterday. I had 12 hours sleep, so I'm getting back in the game.
Good
man. Never ill.
Good
man. I haven't been ill for 1,000 years.
Yeah, well, happens to the best of us, Pete. I was just doing a little preamble there for anybody watching this video when we send it out. And one of the things I was saying is, you guys might have heard me say this when we speak on the phone. I say, there is only one Peter Sage, and I know we are. I know we're all unique individuals, and we're all here, to make our own unique contribution. But I really do mean that, Pete. You are a force to be reckoned with when you are on point, which is 99.9% of the time. So
I appreciate that, buddy.
Welcome. Thanks for showing up. And you're in Tenerife, yeah?
I am indeed. Are we kicking off now?
We are kicking off now. There's no time like the present, is there? So
gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. I was also just saying that I think I've known you now for about 21, 22 years, something like that. A bit of time, a bit of water has gone under the bridge, yeah?
Yeah, it certainly has. Yeah, and I think you're right. I think it was 2001.
Something like that. So I do feel very, very qualified to say that I know you very well and can speak for your experience, your knowledge, your passion, your purpose, and your integrity when it comes to separating people from mass consciousness thinking and being the best version of themselves possible, which of course is what Ultimate Self-Mastery, your flagship program, is all about. And that's what we're here to have a little chat about today for a few minutes.
Yes, no, very happy to discuss. I'm very proud of it. It's changed thousands of lives. And I don't even think when I put it together, I even appreciated the level of vision that it would rise to, because you don't, everybody's baby's the best looking baby. But yeah, I really had no idea how impactful this would be over the period of time. So I'm very, very, very proud of it.
It's a bit like, I often think, if you take a song by the Eagles, like Hotel California or Shine On You Crazy Diamond by Pink Floyd, I've often wondered to myself, when these guys back in the day were in the studio recording that song, if they knew the impact, if they knew it was going to be such a monster hit, yeah? And I can say, as a veteran of personal development programs, personal development courses, you've definitely got license to say this is kind of the only personal development program you will ever need.
Yes, I mean, obviously from handling the inner world, USM is everything. Yeah, as you know, I have my own peer group as well for the EMF, but for a flagship program for dealing with the inner world, which is, I mean, everything starts with self-mastery, otherwise you're wasting your time. USM is about as complete as you can get.
Yeah. What gave you the idea for the title Ultimate Self-Mastery, specifically those 3 words?
I think it does what it says on the tin. We certainly had a situation where, how can I put it? You've got a program that really has everything focused on one aim. And when it comes to that, you've really got to be focused on telling people what it does. And you could argue that if you want to achieve self-mastery, there are various pathways you can take. You can argue that you can go sit on a mountain top. You can argue that you can spend 20 years studying with Zen masters. You can argue different ways, but self-mastery. The reason I call it ultimate is because it compresses that time frame into something that makes a radical shift in the shortest possible amount of time.
Brilliant, brilliant. When I'm talking to people, prospective students about joining us on Ultimate Self-Mastery, one of the things that they really love more than anything, and this gets mentioned time and time again, is the metaphor that you use in the web class precursor to Ultimate Self-Mastery, which is about the ant being on the back of the elephant. Tell us a little bit about how that came about, please, and maybe drill down a bit further into the real significance of that.
It's a an amazing visual because it really does communicate it. And I owe that to a friend of mine, Vince Vincenti, who originally had the idea. In fact, he actually wrote a book called The Ant and the Elephant. And Vince is a friend of mine, been a friend for many, many years. And I don't think it got the recognition that it deserved, which is why, when I was communicating this, it was a perfect metaphor to use. I mean, I drilled down on it a little bit more because what Vince doesn't really put into context is what I call the number one rule of personal growth, which is people will never rise above the opinion of themselves. And that phrase alone has a lot of gravitas when it comes to understanding most of our challenges. And when we realize that as human beings, we're designed to operate 90% plus of the time, 95 for most, out of habit. Humans do very little out of logic, unfortunately. We do a few things out of passion, but vast majority of what we do out of habit. And what essentially habit is, it's an evolutionary development, which is exceptionally useful if it's used for you. It's like having a gun if you need to protect yourself from wild animals out in the bush. It's useful, but if you point it at your own head and pull the trigger, not so useful, right? So the tool is the tool. So the way that evolution set up the game, as far as we can understand, is that when we use this crowning achievement of human biology, the prefrontal cortex, the thing that allows us with no teeth, relative to lions and tigers, no claws, relative to bears, no speed relative to a cheetah, no ability to climb trees relative to a monkey, none of the stuff that most animals use in order to try to assert or protect their place in the food chain. We have none of that. What do we have? We have a prefrontal cortex. In other words, we can't outrun an Alsatian. We can't outsmell it. We can't outbite it. We can outthink it. And so that's why we're the top of the food chain. However, the way that works is that once we've used this critical thinking, this ability to visualize, imagine, split test A and B scenarios in our mind, weigh up different levels of logic and reasoning and deduction, and then make a choice. If we try to do that and we do it consistently, that part of the brain is prime real estate. It's also the slowest form of processing. Mental cognition, thinking is the slowest form of mental processing. That's why we talk about having conscious competence. If you've learned the steps to salsa, you know where to put your feet, but you're still dancing clunky. I mean, ask any woman who's danced with a guy that's in that phase. The people that move are the people that aren't thinking about their moves. You could apply the same to martial arts. You could apply the same to golf. It's the same thing. When you get to unconscious competence, what's happened is you've transcended the prefrontal cortex and you've made a decision or taken an action or a behavior so frequently that evolution says, okay, you're smart, you're intelligent, you're top of the food chain when it comes to brain power. If you've made this decision X number of times, we don't need to take up the front processing anymore. We're going to hand it to the reflex mid part of the brain, and you don't have to think about it. So now you drive to work on your day off because you weren't thinking about it, even though you were navigating a whole fleet of crazies on the other side of the road, making split-second unconscious decisions that your life literally depends on, and we think nothing of it. So the ant is the front part of the brain. It's hardworking, it's intelligent, it can make reasoning decisions. And you can say, I want to go and have a better body. I want to get in shape. That could be a front decision. But if unconsciously, the ant that's walking across of the back of an elephant that's going in the opposite direction, you've got hidden unresolved beliefs about poor self-image. You're going to find, or your elephant will find, all of the excuses to skip the gym. It'll find all of the excuses as to why you're not worthy of looking like the people on the cover of the magazines. It's going to reinforce all of the reasons why you consider yourself to be not attractive. Same happens for money, same happens in relationships. And therefore, ultimate self-mastery is not essentially trying to be a master of your ant. It's aligning your ant and your elephant so that you don't talk yourself out of your potential. You don't self-sabotage. You don't procrastinate. You show up as the best version of yourself, not trying to change the outer world. Outer world follows inner world.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
when you align your ant and elephant, your entire movie script of the movie of your life gets rewritten at an entirely different level of quality.
Yeah. I think it was some clever bugger like Socrates, like that, a long time ago. They figured it out a long time ago, those guys, when they said "so within, without," right?
Know thyself.
The ancient Greeks. And for anybody who's just not totally clear after that brilliant explanation about unconscious competency, breathing would be a great example of that, right?
well, to be fair, breathing's the only aspect of bodily function that we have. We can either take conscious control of or unconscious control. But where it absolutely fits that metaphor, Steve, is that the second we're not thinking about it, it automatically switches seamlessly. Now, what would happen if you were thinking about success, and when you weren't thinking about it, it automatically switched seamlessly into continuing the same actions, just like breathing? That would be powerful.
Yeah, it would be, wouldn't it? And another thing that we talk about a lot when I'm speaking with people about USMP is, and I think you mentioned it a few sentences back, you'll never be bigger than the opinion you have of yourself. Yeah. So I always try and elaborate on that for people and say it's a bit like saying you'll never be able to outgrow your own self-image, how you really see yourself deep down inside. And I often use the metaphor, which is well known, isn't it, about people who either inherit a large sum of money and they've never been accustomed to having money before of any significance, or they win the lottery. Yeah. And we all know how the story goes. Within 3 to 5 years, most of them are broke or having to be careful with the bit that they've got left. Because if you were to ask them, how do you feel about having all that money? They go, fantastic, great, amazing. And it's Bentleys, champagnes and Mauritius holidays all the way, isn't it? But and I've actually seen this with somebody who I used to work with as well, who'd never earned any significant amount of money. And it's just amazing to watch that unconscious behavior go to work and find every single way possible to get rid of that money, because really they are very uncomfortable having it, right?
Cognitive dissonance is the psychology term that they use for that. And it's essentially, picture this. You have you're a tuning fork and you are letter C, and you're walking around. If someone suddenly tries to convert you into letter D, it's not your inherent perspective. You need to upgrade yourself. You can't tune in. Yeah. Another way of saying is you're like a giant magnet attracting everything that is congruent with your opinion of yourself. Now, if you do something that isn't, that magnet tries to pull you away from that. And money's a great example of that. If you grew up in a household where money was tight and your parents were arguing over money, there's unconscious beliefs, and every social study will validate this, that you link the concept of money to danger, lack of love, criticism, emotions, high cortisol, high adrenaline triggering emotions that you want to avoid. So the ant says, of course, I want some money. But as soon as you take actions to try to change that, you will self-sabotage, because there's a bigger part of you running the master software in the background that says, no, because if you do get money, you're going to be unloving. You're going to be in danger. You're going to be X, Y, Z.
So I always try and explain to people, regarding this sort of thing, that you can achieve success. You can get further than where you're at now through using sheer force and sheer willpower, and if you've got the willpower of Genghis Khan, you might even stay there for a while. Yeah. But ultimately, your behavior on this physical plane of consciousness will always revert to that which is most congruent of the self-image, right?
If you take a 6-year-old, and there's something I want to bring in here, because it's not a hierarchy of better or worse. People that use that as a way to promote themselves are more into what I call the spiritual ego. So a 6-year-old is not a faulty teenager. An acorn is not a faulty oak tree. They're just at different levels of their own journey of progression. Now, if you take a 6-year-old who wants to be a teenager, you're right. They can dress up in older clothes. They can stand on stilts. They can do all sorts. They can try to talk like a teenager, but at some point they're going to come back down to being 6 because it's a temporary mask over the top. How does a 6-year-old get to a teenager? They evolve. Now, the good news and bad news is that emotional maturity and biological maturity are not correlated. We know there's a lot of emotional teenagers running around in some very adult bodies. But it also means on the other side, and this is why self-mastery is so effective at being able to compress timeframes. You can have one shift in awareness. Take something like jealousy in the context of relationships. If you are a jealous kind of person and you realize that all jealousy is that it's the false belief that you think you have the right over who should or shouldn't love you. Jealousy is it's essentially a present time fear of a future loss. Total mismanaged imagination. It's total insecurity led. Now, some people like to have people that are a bit jealous or get a bit jealous because it validates the fact that there's a connection, but it's a low level connection. If you realize, you shouldn't have the right over who should or shouldn't love you, right? It's a different part. I mean, if down at the lower levels of consciousness, fine. But if you make that one shift, boom, you can outgrow without having to go 4 years in night school, or sign up for a 12-month relationship program. And what Ultimate Self-Mastery does, it delivers layer after layer of specific insight that not only gives context for understanding what I call the rules of the road, but it does it in a way that allows you to raise your level of consciousness. And I'll explain what I mean by rules of the road. Again, as you probably know, one of the things that one of the few things that I tend to be okay with is being able to use metaphors to explain, because the brain thinks in comparative frames. This is like that. So, for example, if we be a little controversial here, and this will test somebody's ability to, whether they're triggered or not. But if you, for centuries, we were taught by religion that God made man in his own image, and that may well be true. But what human beings do is they project what they do know into what they don't know, because that's the only frame of reference on how the brain works. So if we had to answer the question, who or what created all of this stuff? Chances are it was more man created God in his own image, because that's how the brain works. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. That's not the argument we're having. But when it comes to processing using metaphors, the rules of the road, let me share this with you. Imagine that you figured out how to drive a car, but you'd never been given the rules of the road. And what would it be like every time you went to the supermarket? Well, I'll tell you, you'd be taking your life into your own hands. You'd be avoiding these other crazies on the road. You'd keep getting stopped for speeding tickets and everything else. But if we're suddenly to pull you aside and give you 5 minutes or less of context, hey, this white line in the middle of the road, if you stay this side of it, you don't have to worry about the oncoming traffic. These different colored lights at the junctions mean this, and those little numbers in the circles at the side of the road mean that. Just with those 3 particular aspects of those rules, your entire experience of driving shifts. Now, question for you. Did the other traffic change?
No.
Did they build different roads for you?
No.
No. Your understanding of the rules of the road led to a completely different experience. Now, most people are going through life, as you say, trying to use willpower, trying to force, because they don't know the rules of the road. When it comes to the physical rules, we're all pretty familiar with it. In fact, we've reverse engineered through observation enough of the rules that govern physical matter reality that we can repair the human body or put a man on the moon. Starting with way back to Copernicus, leading into Galileo, following through to Sir Isaac Newton and his contemporaries, we now can predict where the moon's going to be 1,000 years from now. Okay, that's fine. But the non-physical, most people haven't got a clue. How does this thing called our mind work? How do we navigate that road? And so Ultimate Self-Mastery essentially gives you some incredible context and tools for being able to drive through the highway of your life in a way where you're not stressed. You're not trying to fight the oncoming traffic. You're not constantly wondering why you're self-sabotaging. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense in terms of what
definitely
the background to it is.
Definitely very, very, very clear and thorough and easy to assimilate explanation. I just wanted to touch on the ultimate self-mastery package, because a lot of people that we're talking to at the moment, they're kind of at a crossroads in their life, and this is why they're attracted to the marketing, from in one sense. A lot of people are doing a job they don't like, working with people they don't like, the whole thing, working for a boss they can't stand, etc., etc. And I always say to people, when they're doing that, you are really going against your heart's desire. If you're doing something which is against that intuition, just for the sake of the survival of a, survival kit, the monthly paycheck, years and years and years of doing that is going to create, things that manifest in different ways, whether it's mental anxiety, even physical conditions. A body not at ease is a body at dis-ease or disease. So there's a program included with the annual package, which is all about, and I think it's based on your vast entrepreneurial experience of having 27 different companies up to now, which teaches people how they can actually start their own business with little or no financial resources. Could you elaborate a little bit on the power of that and the impactfulness of that program for people thinking of going solo?
Absolutely. And one important distinction is it's called How to Start a Business with No Money. And I did a joint production with a good friend of mine called Jimmy Narain, who's a great example as well. And a lot of it came out of my passion for being able to start opportunities or business ventures, etc., with no money, no credit, no debt, through using certain techniques. But not everybody wants to start their own business. If you do, it's a great program. But if you don't, the key benefit of this particular program is it reinvents your relationship to money, because most people have no clue what money is. They have a dysfunctional association to what they believe it to be. And I'll give you a very, very brief, quick example. See, money, the only place it exists in the universe to have meaning is in the mind of a human. So everything else, it's shiny rocks, hard metal, and pieces of paper with dead people on it. Now, we invented it as a concept to kind of solve what I call the chicken and goats problem. Back in the day where we were bartering, you had chickens, I had goats, and you want goats and I want chickens, we're in business. But if I want chickens and you don't want goats, kind of a bit of a challenge. So what money was created essentially to level the playing field as a medium of exchange. Now, one thing that people fail to recognize is money is a byproduct. As soon as we start trying to get money, and people that are trying to get more money usually have very little of it, right? Or are constantly trying to get more because they're focused on effect, not cause. What I mean, see, money is used as a way to measure perceived value. We all know the expression, how much is a house worth? Well, whatever somebody's willing to pay for it. Same house 20 years later, worth a different amount, but the same bricks and the same land. So it's perceived value. What's somebody going to pay for a life-saving operation? It's, what's it worth to them? So money is essentially a way to measure perceived value. It's a key point. But if you have a think about it, if I was to sit in front of a fire and say, hey, I've got a deal for you. Give me some heat. I'll go fetch you some wood. You'd look at me thinking, you're going to need a blanket very soon. If I was to go into the gym, and I know you and I are big fans of the gym, Steve, and if you were my personal trainer, and I walked in, he says, right, Sage, you want to get that gold medal? This is the program. And I look around at the weights and I say, hey, Steve, I've got a deal for you. Give me the strength first, then I'll go lift the weights. You're going to look at me like I'm on drugs. But most people say, hey, give me the money, when what they should be doing is focusing on how can I add value? Because money is a measure of perceived value. If someone comes to me that wants to play tennis and get better at tennis, and I say, what's your outcome? They say, I want to win. I'm like, no, forget winning. Focus on improving speed, reflex, endurance, stamina, hand-eye coordination. And you'll look over your shoulder in about a month or two and you think, wow, I'm winning more, because winning is a byproduct of those actions.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I want to lose weight. No, forget the weight. Get off the scales. Focus on finding a diet and exercise program that's sustainable for you for the right reasons. And you'll step on the scales in a couple of months and think, wow, where did all that weight disappear to? Oh, I want to be rich. No, first concentrate on becoming a person of value. And you can't add value if you are coming from an inherent state of insecurity, poor self-image, lack of confidence, because you're operating with a rule set that says my financial bank account has to go up first before my emotional bank account. Well, I'm sorry, that doesn't work. Your emotional bank account has to go up first, then your financial bank account will follow. And the challenge is society has conditioned so many people to link their self-worth and their net worth together. So they're forever trapped in this spiraling down loop of sustenance or scraping by or coping or paying the bills. And then they wonder, is this all there is? So the how to start a business with no money, I put that in there as an additional program to incentivize the people that buy the annual package, because they're saying, I'm in for the year. I'm making a commitment. I'm like, I'll make a commitment back, and I'll fast track your relationship to money issues by giving you this program, because it's outstanding.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Talking about the program being a year long, one of the conversations that we're having a lot with people getting on the program. In fact, I just enrolled somebody earlier in Venice, Italy. Yeah, very nice. And what I was saying, what makes this different is, do you remember back in the day when you would buy a program of any substance or significance, you'd get the huge box delivered by DHL, and there's like 50 DVDs in there, and it looks great, and you think, wow, that is value for money, look at that. And then you think, right, where do I start? You know, and I'll tell you something which happened a little while back. Actually, I was talking to a guy. He says, I don't know if I need another course. I said, why not? Talk to me. He says, well, you know, I got ripped off by, I won't mention the person's name because it wouldn't be fair, but a very well-known trainer. And he did that typical British thing. He went, X bloody X, you know, this is the guy. I said, oh, really? I used to follow X bloody X on YouTube a few years ago, you know. I thought it was very good, very entertaining and very knowledgeable. Is the program no good then? I'm shocked, I'm surprised. Guy goes really quiet and he says to me very contritely, actually, to tell you the truth, Steve, I've not even started it. Not even taking the wrapper off, metaphorically speaking. Yeah. And so what I try to get over to people is that your limiting beliefs, all these blocks, these paradigms, these patterns, whatever you want to call them, they were put there over time. Yeah. Time, frequency, repetition. Yeah. This is the way that you start to redress that process. Yeah. So a year is a good period, but I'd really love you to elaborate on that and more as to the question of why, when people say, why will this program work for me when I've tried so many others and I'm still pretty much in the same place? Yeah.
Great question. And two angles to that, Steve. One is the fact that, yes, as I say on the training, a lot of the time people go to knowledge mastery to try to help them shift from their internal issues, and it doesn't help. Your ants could be the smartest ant in the world, a PhD in the ant world. It's still not going to have any impact on your elephant. This program addresses the elephant, not the ant. And it does it over time. You're layering conditioning, just how I mentioned the evolution set up the learning process. You're going to hear different things, or the same things different ways over time here. And one of the most common pieces of feedback we get after about 3 months, which is the first phase, the initiate phase, is, oh, I had this challenge and I just dealt with it in a completely different way. And afterwards, I realized I dealt with it in a completely different way. Again, we're working on the elephant. I'm not giving you a 6-step program to follow because that's what your ant wants. And it's been ineffective up to this point in most people's lives. So a 12-month program gives it long enough. Time is an issue when it comes to how we're humans. For example, you can't make a baby in 3 months. Right? Everything has its own level of germination when it comes to, especially to behavior. And if you're undoing a lifetime, decades for some people, of mismanaged thinking and imagination, then you want this to stick. I don't want to teach you some new skill. And then, for the same reasons you didn't apply the last skills you learned, you're not applying these. It's not working that way. And 12 months is a great way. And I designed the program understanding that most people end up with data for later when they buy a course. And so it's engaging. There's, the week in 60 seconds that I give you each week is a really excellent 60-second, but because a lot of people, when you get the email, you get the text message, say, hey, week 6 is unlocked.
Yeah.
Well, week 6 may be, as I say, an hour's lesson, or maybe 20 minutes. But if let's say week 6 is an hour, when you get the email or the text with the best will in the world, that's interrupting your schedule. You won't have time for it there and then, but you have got time for is to watch the 60-second overview that essentially tells you why you need to schedule it. And people get excited with that. They love the, because I'm telling you the high points of what you're about to learn. So now, rather than think, oh, it's getting in my calendar, it's like, oh, wow, when can I get this in my calendar? So there's that. There's also a ton of bonuses. I don't really talk about this much in the training because partly it's a surprise, but every few weeks, I put in some incredible bonuses that are worth more than the value of the course, each one. And I think there's, over the course of the year, there's probably about 8 bonuses, something like that, which it's stellar. I can't give any more away because I don't want to.
No.
The other aspect is the welcome video. The welcome video guides you through how to get the most out of the program. It is imperative you watch that. In fact, if you watch the webinar, if you watch the masterclass, and you are still on the fence, you're not quite sure, I give you the welcome video because there's some really good content in there about how to understand habits. Which is, whether you choose to go solo or come with us on Ultimate Self-Mastery, it's going to benefit you. It's that shift in awareness. It gives you some of the rules of the road around habits on how to start getting your elephant yourself pointing in a better direction. But if you go onto there, you'll see that I give the best on how to get the most out of the course. And it's not a lot. I give context for how the learning works. I give context for understanding why some people fail and some people don't. Forewarned is forearmed. And if you've watched the training and you haven't gone and got your free gifts from that page and watched that 20-minute video, it's a must. Because even if you choose not to come on the program because of whatever reason, that video is my gift to you for showing up on the masterclass. And it's imperative that you don't cheat yourself out of what it is that I'm trying to help you with.
Yeah. I always like to recount to people as well. When I first met you, I think you were 26 or 27. You only look about 6 months older than that now, mate. but I was, when I look back, and join up the dots, at that age, you had a beautiful house, which you still have in Leicestershire, paid for. You were driving a silver 550 Maranello, paid for. You were the boss of the owner of a multinational, multi-million-dollar health and nutrition company based in Sark in the Channel Islands, right? You were the 50% owner in a buy, add value and flip property development company in Leicestershire. And you were also with late Jan Spatica, the co-founder and co-chairman of the high-end chain of energy fitness centers at 26, 27 years old. I mean, how the hell did that all come about at that age?
I got into personal growth when I was 17. I mean, I dropped out of school at 16. I'm not academically gifted. I couldn't spell MBA. But what I did do, I came across personal growth. I understood that if I got my inner world in alignment, my outer world would follow. And I studied, your Tony Robbins and Bob Proctor's and George Zalakis of the world. And I realized that, whoa, hang on a minute, there's an industry that teaches you how to become a better version of yourself. So I had a lot of training in the early days. I mean, I think personal growth has paid me way more than anything else that I've ever invested in. And the challenge was in the early days, it was all done to try to cover up the insecurities I had as a young man that was trying to prove to the world I was good enough. I thought, oh, okay, I don't have any qualifications. I've got no significance there. I was born on a low-cost council estate. I've got no significance. I'm no silver spoon. But hang on, if I make my first million, then I'll have made it. And of course, I make my first million, and I feel empty. Why? Don't know. I had a look. Then I realized, obvious. Well, clearly, I need to make 2 million in case I lose the first.
Yeah.
And then, it's like, well, obviously now I need another Ferrari. Now I need another business. And it was really in the early days, it was a two-edged sword. One, it motivated me. It really allowed me to to follow the path of success at the expense of understanding the path of fulfillment.
Mm.
And you mentioned earlier about people working for, you know, bosses they don't like in jobs they can't stand. The pattern for that is quite often, and anyone watching this, see how it fits. If it's, you know, works for you, then great. If not, you know, discard it. But in my experience, what's actually going on there is that people are trading off their need for fulfillment for their addiction to certainty.
Yeah.
And one thing I've learned is, you know, my favorite quote from Tony Robbins, who I had the privilege of working alongside for 15 years, was, yeah, the quality of a person's life is in direct proportion to the amount of uncertainty they can comfortably live with. Now, the key word to that is comfortably, because uncertainty is going to exist. We've seen over the last few years that, you know, in the global situation, there is no certainty. People thought they had jobs, they're gone. People thought there was industries that have disappeared. And governments suddenly pulling the rug or crashing the economy or locking you in your home.
People thought politicians told the truth.
Yeah, all of that stuff, right? But yeah, your ability to handle uncertainty is the key defining characteristic, especially around entrepreneurs. Yeah. Because I've not known how much money I'm going to earn next week since I was 17. You know, I've just been asked to make a big multi-million-dollar decision last week that essentially gambles, it's in a lot of people's eyes, a huge amount of money on a strategy that has no guarantee. Well, guess what? There are no guarantees. You want a guarantee? Buy a toaster. Yeah. Now, the fact that I have my team were worried, but I'm like, I look at it, I assess it. It's a strategic decision. I look at the numbers, I tune in, boom, we're doing it. And early signs right now are it's really paying off. Now we're going to see over the next 6 weeks what the outcome of that strategy is. But if I don't have an ability to handle uncertainty at that level, then I'd be working for somebody I don't like right now. Yeah. And that's another thing, that I always like to quote. We spend our lives quoting people, don't we? And I quote you a lot about when you say, by definition, if you are working for somebody else, they are paying you far, far less than what you're worth, right? Every time, because the job has a certain value. And if I'm the business owner, I'm assuming the risk. People forget business owners eat last, right? If the employees don't eat first, you don't have employees. So, for sure. And my fixed overheads in my main business right now are well into 6 figures a month. So there's a huge amount of pressure is the wrong word, but a huge amount of responsibility. On being able to make sure that everybody's kids are being fed, the school fees are being paid. There's a lot of people relying on you making good decisions. Now, my background is kind of 50% business, 50% personal growth. That's why, to answer your original question, I became successful, I believe, but I was successful and unfulfilled. And I've managed to take the lessons out of that, which I'd learned at 25 years old, and really build a life that, follows fulfillment rather than success. Success is most people get to the top of Success Mountain. They don't like the view. They want to jump off. Right? They spend their entire life sacrificing. I'm talking mainly entrepreneurs now. They sacrifice the best years of their life. They sacrifice their relationship, their health, miss their kids growing up so that they can get to the end of the rainbow. 1% do, where they cash out with enough money that they've been hoping to get, where they can finally feel whatever level of financial freedom they were working towards. And what do? What do they spend the money on? I'll tell you. They've now finally made enough money over all the years to pay for their divorce, to hire a personal trainer to get their health back, and to buy their kids loads of crap so they think they love them again. It's the cosmic joke when it comes to a life chasing success versus a life understanding the role of chasing fulfillment. But back to your original question, which I've almost forgotten what it was. I go off on tangents. It doesn't matter I think we've pretty much covered what the original question was there. I think probably this is a good time to sort of move towards wrapping up, for people just to see this. But my one final question really, or for you to explain and articulate to anybody who is still in decision-making mode about whether to do this, because I speak to people who they give me all the right feedback. We have some of the most amazing emotional conversations,
and then they don't take action for whatever reason. Yeah. And we talk about that as well. But what would your advice be really, or your sort of parting words here to anybody who is wrestling with that should I, shouldn't I decision-making process as to whether to join us on Ultimate Self-Mastery for this year-long journey of growth, Pete? What would that be?
It is a program worth thousands and thousands of dollars. So I don't sell on price. Yeah, I sell on value. That's far better. I learned that in my early days of being a young entrepreneur. But there's two things. One is when I'm doing a business deal, what I always look for is who's assuming the risk. I got an email today, as it happens. It was in my daily report. So it actually came in yesterday. It was in my daily report from my EA. And it was somebody that says, oh, I like the Ultimate Self-Mastery training. I'm absolutely broke. Do me a favor. I've got a really good deal for you. Give me the program. And in 6 months, when I've transformed and made more money, I'll pay you back plus. And I get that somebody's trying to be creative. But the problem with that is I'm assuming all the risk. And so the reason that I created the $49 a month option is to literally lower it to the lowest possible common denominator. If you can't afford $49 to basically change your life, and the first month, by the way, is stellar, then I can't help you. Yeah, it's not for you. I got a lot of free stuff out on YouTube. Go watch that. I got a lot of free stuff out on social. Go watch that. Yeah, if that's where you're at, and I'm no judgment. 4 years ago, I was close to bankruptcy, hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. If you read my book, The Inside Track, you'll understand why. And now we've got obviously a multi 8-figure, moving to 9-figure business.
Very different picture, yeah.
Yeah, and the reason for that is basically what I teach is part of the program. And not because I'm special or clever, but I understand the rules of the road around that stuff. So if you're looking at it, look at it through the lens of how I assess business deals. Who's assuming the risk? Now, you've got a double money back guarantee here, or if you think that in 90 days, you haven't more than paid for the program by a multiple, let us know. Yeah, I'll refund you immediately. Yeah, go to Trustpilot and see the difference this has made to so many people. And you'll also see people give 5-star reviews who, for whatever reason, decided not to move with the product and say, oh, but I got my refund within 24 hours. Yeah. I'm passionate about that. My customer service team know if we get a refund request, I want the money in their bank or on their credit card before close of business that day. Pronto, if possible. Yeah, or at least from our side. Sometimes it takes a day or two, depending on their bank. All right, so who's assuming the risk? If you haven't transformed any of the levels that I'm even alluding to here, then money back. Now, I know this program works. I put my money where my mouth is. So I'm assuming all of the risk on that, but you have to be willing to pay to play and put a little bit of skin in the game. Otherwise, you're not going to show up and press play. So there is that side. The other thing I would remind people of is the concept of constructive versus destructive debt. If you don't have the money, there's people that will finance this for you. They're called Visa and MasterCard. Yeah. And when it comes to understanding that, why does Apple, Facebook, and Google, who have the most cash-rich reserves of any companies on the planet, I mean, their cash reserves rival most GDPs of small countries, okay? They also have massive debt. Apple recently did a $90 billion purchase. Now, they can pay for that in cash without breaking a sweat. What did they do? They went and borrowed $90 billion. Why? Because they understand the power of constructive debt. They're paying, in today's world, a small amount of interest. Yeah, credit cards, you can be up to, say, 20 points. But in banks and stuff, maybe 5% max, depending on the nature of the loan. But what you can do with that other money for Apple is generate a lot more than the 5% they're using to pay off that. So that's constructive debt. I've spent time with Sir Richard Branson. We've shared the stage together several times. He has hundreds of millions of dollars of debt. Why? He understands the power of debt. It's constructive debt. If you're putting self-mastery, ultimate self-mastery on a credit card, it's constructive debt. You are getting a return on that is going to blow away anything that Visa and MasterCard are going to try to charge you. What, $76 in interest over the year? Who you can become in a year? You're going to need a telescope to look back at your old life. Now, so assuming that level of you don't have any money, put it on a card and relax knowing that unlike buying petrol, unlike buying a meal, a bottle of wine, a cinema ticket, or a holiday, right, or a car, like most people do, all of those are examples of destructive debt if you're borrowing money to pay for them. Because they don't, once they're used, they're gone. Cars drop in value. And I know my car drops, $1,000 a week in depreciation, right? But I understand that's part of driving a nice car. But when it comes to constructive debt, I'm very happy to look at a situation where I say, okay, like a house is a great example of constructive debt. Oh, I don't have 300 grand to buy a house. Well, no, you don't need it. You need 5% and a 95% mortgage. And when the mortgage is paid off, the house is worth more than what it was when you bought it. Or in 5 years' time, you want to sell the house. You've made way more money on the value of that house than you have on the repayments of the house. So now, if you buy let's do the math easy, $100 house, that's $100,000 house. What were you living in a $100 house? Let's say $100,000 house, and you put down 50 grand, and you borrow 900 so put down 5 grand, you borrow 95 grand, and in 5 years' time, that house is worth 120 grand. Well, guess what? You just put 4x, on your money. Well, 400%. Now you will have paid a bit of interest on that, so let's drop it down to 3. You 3x your money. That's constructive debt. People that don't have money don't often, look at it through that lens. Now, when it comes to houses, business opportunities, Forex, Amazon business, all of that stuff, I'll tell you flat out, the best investment you will ever make that pays over time consistently for the rest of your life is the investment in yourself. It's tax-free. It improves immediately your quality of life. And you will never have any regrets about spending what is essentially $29 a month amortized on the annual, or $49 a month for the monthly, on how that's going to repay you years into the future. Yeah.
Good metaphor. Pete, brilliant. Thank you for joining me. And anybody watching this, thank you. I hope it's clarified any extra points that needed clarifying for you. And we hope to see you on board with us as students of Ultimate Self-Mastery very soon. See you soon, Pete. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Steve. Always a pleasure.
Cheers. Bye-bye.